Hello, everyone. This is Upfront, where we have quick conversations about how to build a stronger organization by connecting with your frontline team who are critical to your success, but are often hard to reach and engage. Our guests are thought leaders who share real life experiences and insights that you can actually put to work. No fluff, just real stuff at Upfront. I'm your host, Sonia Sapaban at Trivi, an easy AI-driven messaging and feedback tool with no apps or logins required. Your frontline will love Trivi, and your leaders will thrive with real-time insights and next steps. You can find some more information about us on how to connect in the show notes. Now, let's get on with our show. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Casey Oware, Vice President, Human Resources at Encompass Energy in Denver, Colorado. Welcome to Upfront, Casey. So great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, me too. So let's start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and about Encompass Energy. You know, our audience always likes to know who you are and what you do at Encompass Energy.
Yeah, so I'm the Vice President of HR. I've been with Encompass since inception. So this is year 14. We were a startup, and that's been its own tremendous amount of fun and growth. But yeah, lots of learning as well. I got my feet wet in HR, and ever since then, I think we could go as far as enterprise architecture or lots of different words to say jack of all trades, master of none.
Oh, you're being too humble. I think based on our conversation, I'd call you a COO, basically. Now, I don't know if your boss is going to mind me saying that, but I certainly thought when we were talking that you're involved in so many things, and you've done a great job. You've really taken a very hands-on and creative approach from personally calling employees when needed to embedding communications into your time and expense system, even traveling extensively to meet with the field crews and so on. So what are some success stories and what are you most proud of?
Yeah, for me, I would say it wouldn't be a metric, it would be a face, right? So yes, I have traveled extensively to meet with all of our folks, not for inspections, not for audits, just so they know that we care enough to show up and sit down and shake your hand and let's hear what you have to say. But since you start doing that, you tend to continue to do that, which isn't the most scalable of ideas. But yeah, the people that chose to join us 14 years ago, when in talent acquisition, you're saying this is going to feel like a family and this will be like home for frontline employees that have high turnover. They're not sure. And then 14 years later, they have children that have aged into our workforce. And it's to see something that can have that much turnover actually be retention and a family-oriented place is probably my biggest success here.
Oh, that's such a great point. And having been in manufacturing, mostly environments on the front line, I can really relate to that. The multi-generational workforce is really sweet and on a human level, right? And also says a lot about a company. I think I've been in a couple of places where we've been fortunate to have that, and it's really built over the years. It's hard to build, and once you have it, it's very important to see how do you maintain it, because I know, of course, you've been there from the beginning, and it's grown now. I think you were saying across all 50 states. And so I'm sure there's been some challenges, just even communicating with employees, right? And of course, even beyond that, to make them feel truly connected and included. So what are some of those challenges and things that you've dealt with across, just across the years and as you go forward?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, the challenge was my own of thinking that it was a lack of motivation or engagement on their behalf, right? So to just send the email and not get what you're requesting, or then when you call to follow up, they don't know what you're talking about. You're thinking, oh man, could they be less engaged to what we're trying to do here? And then you want to solve it with motivation. Well, when you realize it's not a motivation problem, right? And you can call it a communication problem, but I think it goes a layer or two deeper than that, to where it's valued connection, right? Like, we don't just need a broadcast system. Everyone, you can figure out how to communicate with people over 50 states in 10 years. That's actually the easiest problem to solve. But how to make each individual feel valued in that connection, where it's not just communication, is something that I think every operator is still dealing with every day. And if they have cracked it, then they're at the forefront.
Yeah, now, as we have chatted, you know that I've shared with you as well that we deal with that day in and day out. And actually, there are many different ways that people approach these things. I know that you've talked about not just visiting people, but getting on a call. At what point, I mean, you talk about that's not scalable, right? At what point it felt like, 'cause some people say the break point is at even 20 people, right? Where you could be really personal. Some say it's at 50, some say at 100, now you're close to 500. So, tell us a little bit about the makeup of the workforce, right? And where are they? I think they're across many field offices, and like an average worker in the field, what does their day look like? How do you reach them if you need to reach them?
Yeah, an average workday for our frontline field folks, we are across all 50 states. They're usually working in what we call two-man crews, but sometimes they work as one-person crews. It depends on our safety circumstances, right, and how safe we can keep our people. But they're going to work what we call an average of 6 10s, right? So they're working 10-hour days in the field on large scale, either pipeline projects or renewable farms. Our portfolio really does have a lot of diversity to it for where they could be standing. But at the end of the day, they're standing outside somewhere. And a lot of people like to use the words right in the middle of nowhere, which is more often than not, with very precise instruments trying to get the job done.
Yeah, so let's say they're there and they see some issue on a pipeline, right? Something that maybe they see a little corrosion, or they see something is loose. And I know that you've built some capabilities around that. Tell us a little bit about how can they do that in a way that's really built for them, right? That it's not too much of a burden on them to try and remember to document that or let somebody else know, right? And to feel like they have that connection, that they're not in the middle of nowhere just by themselves, and they're not sure who to even tell.
Yeah, we've relied on a lot of different technology platforms over the years. And in the very beginning, right, you're just hoping to get everybody set up with email. And then you get to a different level of sophistication where you either have, we've got QR codes on everybody's hard hat where they can just buzz in and think of whatever it's a near miss, or to your point, right, just a little note that they're trying to send or communicate in any manner, to drop it in. We also have lots of our own internal, like there's a hotline number if you need it. At this point, right, at 14 years in, they all have my phone number, and they can call anytime they have any questions. But we've tried culture-wise to set an extremely open door policy, but knowing that they could be without cell service, they could be without internet, they could be without all of these things for the 10 hours that they're on that project site. We try to make it to where even if they use it, it just syncs when it does hit Wi-Fi. It doesn't have to happen right then, to try to take the burden off them to remember to continuously try to have service.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, a lot of these things, if they work with Wi-Fi, and if they don't need a login or a password, right? Because then it just sends, when they hit an area where it can go. But also, I know, I mean, the QR code is a great thing. A lot of people, we talk day in and day out with people in very similar circumstances, and the QR code tends to be the thing to do. Now, I know that a lot of your people, there's not even a physical office to necessarily go to, right? So that's why you have these stickers. I thought that was pretty interesting to put it on their hard hats. So they can, so it's always there. But it's still like a link, right? They hit a link, they go to it. And so, I think there's always, as you say, there's many different tools. It's just when it's built specifically for them, they feel it, right? They know that it's really built for them. It's not something, an office tool that now they have to figure out how to use in the field, right? Which often is obvious to them, but not obvious to other people, perhaps. And I know you do some engagement surveys to get some feedback from them, right?
Yeah, especially with these travels, when we have one set up time a year that we call the road show, and that is not the best way to title it, but unfortunately it stuck. And in that, right, we're going to ask 5 questions, and it's a lot of them. Do they enjoy working here, and what do they like, and what can we improve? What can we do better? We get our best ideas from our people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. They are so close to the work, and they know things that no one, you, me, anybody who is even 1 degree removed from that could never know, right? So when an idea hits their head or, comes to mind, or if they have something to say when you do an engagement survey, it's really extremely important to capture that in the moment so they don't forget. Because, when they're off work, once the clock hits, they just want to get out of there, right? And so you can't really just remember it and say, oh, I'll do it at the end of the day. So many times we've come across things where something bad happened down the line, and they go, and we've always learned. I was actually a quality person for a long time. And anytime we looked at any incident, somebody somewhere knew there was an issue. It was just a matter of who did they tell? Did they tell the right person? Did they tell them in a timely manner? And then when we would go back and find out in a 9 out of 10 cases was somebody who was on a line, they noticed something, but at the time it was just too much effort to go, even open a link or whatever, and just do all of that to enter that. And so later on, they were like, oh yeah, I said I would remember that at the end of my shift, and then I forgot my kid was sick or, whatever. So these things happen all the time. And in the industry in general, across frontline, actually across different industries, the engagement is pretty low on surveys, right? Because again, same reason. And I know you shared some of that. So let's just look at the future though. I mean, you've done a lot of great things. As you look ahead, I know you're intending to grow, and certainly everybody knows energy is more and more important in our lives. Everything needs more energy. And certainly in whether it's oil and gas or manufacturing, all different kinds of industries, they really rely on the energy. How do you plan to maintain and continuously improve that frontline really experience? As you say, it's more than communications, right? How do you envision the employee experience where every employee can feel heard and part of the organization day to day? Let's say if you have thousands of employees, hopefully in not too distant future, right? Across maybe even beyond the 50 states, right? How do you envision that in terms of the employee experience?
Yeah, I think the first part of that is making sure that it's not just a few of us that recognize the difference in individual connection and communication, right? And to start really pushing that as a culture move, right? So if the goal is no longer just communication, but connection, and that you're genuinely a part of every piece of this, then it changes, right? I also think back to appreciation languages a lot, right? And that can help when you're trying to really engage with people and then feel connected, because right, all workforces, the default is gifts, whether it's a gift card or a hat or right. And there's a lot of science and research behind the fact that that's the least appreciated form of recognition. So what else can we do here, right? To form the connections to where they really know that they're valued and they know that we hear them. We're not just talking to them.
Yeah, when I was on the floor, I remember I was very popular engineer on the line, manufacturing engineer, because simply for one reason, because I quickly realized a lot of what we would get in emails and just, in meetings, kind of in the back office, that some of that information took a long time, if ever, to get to the front line. And so I would routinely make it my business to let them know about an email I got about something. And so everybody was always very interested in what the latest, what was the latest that I'd heard. And they always talked about, we're last to know, right? And yet we are here on the front line. And so it's how do you go from that, from last to know, to heard and valued, right? I mean, that's a very big part of it, which also helps with retention quite a bit. So that's what I wonder. I mean, I know you're very thoughtful. So when you think of, imagine now 2,000 employees in 50 states and maybe even beyond in North America, maybe you go a little bit across the borders, north and south or something. How do you envision them feeling heard and valued every day? And I'll add this, I think a lot of times that comes down to who do I even talk to, right? I mean, like you say, these small teams, sometimes they don't even have a direct supervisor that's really knows them, right? They have a project manager, but the project manager probably just, signs their time card or something and doesn't really know their name or knows them that well. So how do you envision that in the future? I think a lot of organizations are grappling with that, especially in this day and age where we're just all more connected. We're used to being more connected in our personal lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you envision that connection happening at larger scale?
Yeah, at a larger scale, I would hope that, right, that culture push is how you get at least your foot in the door. So no matter how big we get, don't ever want it to be where that manager doesn't know the names. We both know it's likely the case, right? I mean, it's a remote workforce. You're using nicknames. They just see a time card come in. There's a high turnover, so they're not invested in genuinely getting to know these people. But if everyone starting at the top is going for knowing who they are so that they are not just a number or a cog in the wheel, and we do genuinely want to know that they are okay and who they are and how we can be better for them. If you start at the top and you get that down, it's not just about supervisors and managers, but then we also do a big push of a couple times a year of just look after each other, right? Like you don't have to be looking up or down. You could just be looking to the right of whoever is on that project with you. And are we looking after each other? And even then, right, you're not going to look after somebody that you don't have a genuine care for. So let's start there. Let's actually care what's happening here about all of our people. And if that's the culture, instead of just, I've got another Joe Schmo time card, then we have the chance of an open dialogue instead of just, these tunnels of communication that shoot each way.
Yeah, absolutely. That can, it starts with that, right? It starts with a culture. And then just the processes, the mechanism, the tools, and everything else that comes with it. But it starts with the culture, and you make a really good point about looking out for each other, not just sideways, not just up or down, but also kind of around you, right? So that's a really great point. If you were going to leave one thing we always look for one actionable nugget that our audience can go after this and say, that lady Casey said something smart, I'm going to go do that. What would that be?
If at any company you can crack the barrier of scalable individual connection as opposed to communication, you will break the trade war of people that all of our industry is in right now. Right? It's just as simple as that. We are all fighting for labor, qualified labor, and the qualified ones go where they feel most appreciated and valued, and you will have solved the puzzle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. That is a great advice to crack that, but how would they crack it? I mean, that's easier said than done.
Well, are we writing books on it? I'm trying to crack it. I try to crack it every day. And I think the really fun part about what was a startup that's now one of the industry leaders is that every time you think you've cracked it, you then double in size, or you're now in a different part of the world, or, right? Like if you think that you have cracked it, know that you haven't, because something is going to change to make it a different issue that now needs to be solved. So even in our workplace, I tell people, just picture me back here with a Rubik's Cube, and I'm just twisting it all the time, because the second I got it to line up, we changed an industry standard, or here now we have a mass mobilization. Like something has changed over here that I've got to twist it again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Casey, I never asked you a question that I would be willing to answer, so I'll add my 2 cents if I may. I think it's about curiosity. Be curious, right? I always tell people, even if you don't know what to do, and this happens very often with me, it's just ask a question. And sometimes my team goes, well, that's not fair. You're just asking us questions. And I go, but you got to understand that everything is changing so fast. There's so many variables. There's so many uncertainties. I mean, gosh, one day we wake up and there's a war. I mean, literally, right? We wake up, there's a pandemic. I mean, so nobody, I don't care if you're a first line supervisor, HR professional, leader, a CEO, or you sit on a board, you always have to be prepared to ask questions of the people most affected and closest to your product and to your customers. And that's the front line, right? So how do you come up, even if you can just come up with a way to ask good questions, or if you don't know what questions to ask, have a way for people to easily ask you questions. It's curiosity on both directions, right? Like if I send something about benefits or policies and people don't know what something means, right? But they don't feel like, oh, let me bug Casey now and call her, or let me, go email Sonia or whatever, right? They have an easy way to do it, to just send their question and they're sure to get an answer. It's going to be go to the right people, right? If they had something like that even, so it's curiosity is in both directions, is ask good questions and make it possible for the people to ask their questions of you.
I would say we might be a little bit in terms of generations, right? I don't know that everybody can connect with this metaphor, but if you think of back when you used to have to go to the bank in person all the time, and those little chutes of tunnels that where you stick your check in and it shoots over, and then they and you're just shooting things back and forth at this specific designated time. And that's the only way you can do your banking, right? And if you think of communication that way, that's usually where the failure is, right? Like you can only communicate with this specific tube on this specific hour of the day, and you're just shooting information over and hoping, and they will or will not shoot something back, right? And if you really start thinking of it as, to your point, curiosity, I'm always in the thought-provoking world, right? If we can just provoke some thought and get some light bulbs going, it's not always going to be a complain fest, right? But there's a problem to be solved everywhere, every day, in every workforce. And if one person is trying to solve it, there's not enough experience in the world or time. But if everybody's all together and there's no tunnels anymore, it's just a room full of people in conversation, like a Christmas party, you are going to get so much more valuable information.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You just have to make it easy, whether it's a get together and a Christmas party kind of environment or holiday party, or if it's some other means, you have to figure out how to do that. I do think that that's make or break for organizations, especially as they go forward, and especially as we are more and more connected together, as just people, as you say, it's maybe somewhat generational. I'm kind of like in between where, fortunately I was, I still remember some of those old days, but also I'm young enough that I can relate to the new experiences and have had to, come along with it. And so it's really a great, I think my era is the best because frankly, I can see both sides, right? I mean, there's some people that are so young that they don't remember any of that with, what you're describing, right? And then there's some people who were just got the tail end of, they were mostly in that era. And by the time all of this came, it's kind of all new and they were never never really got on board with it. And so it's fortunate to be in that place of remembering that, and how many aspects of our lives, just our personal lives, have changed. I'm much more in touch with my mother than I used to be when I used to mail her a letter and it would take several days to get to her, in another part of the country or the world, right? But now it's like even though, she texts me all the time and uses emojis too. It's like I hear from her all the time. So we're in touch all the time. Even when I'm at work, she would usually say, oh, I don't want to bother you during the week because you're busy. But now, I've told her, it doesn't bother me. I'll look at it when I look at it, and it's really easy. So we just look at our personal lives and look at how does that, that sets our expectations in the work world, right? And then we come to the work, and if we're on the front line, we got to go find a kiosk, or we got to go, it's just a different kind of a experience that's becoming more and more disconnected from how our personal lives are progressing. So I think your comments are really valuable. I really appreciate your time. I wish we had more time. I've really enjoyed it. Maybe we'll have you again, Casey. You're just full of great energy and great ideas. But this really wraps up another Upfront episode. For our audience, if you found this useful, please find us on Spotify to listen to more episodes, or watch us these episodes on YouTube, and also on LinkedIn, and share it with others. If you need help connecting with your frontline or deskless employees, see the show notes for information on how to connect with us, or you can just email us at upfront, the name of this podcast, upfront, at gotrivy.com. That's upfront at gotrivy.com. Bye for now. Till the next episode.